It's International Day against homophobia, biphobia and transphobia.
And is it?
When is it?
Yeah.
It's the 17th of May.
Okay. So I'm Matthew. I identify as gay and I live in Salford. I'm 15. Yeah.
Great. And then Leah can maybe put that in somewhere. Leah, edit that in somewhere. All right, so let's start us off with what is Idahot? What does it stand for? What is it about? What's it for? What is Idahot?
So it's the International Day against homophobia, biphobia and transphobia. And it's basically just a day that kind of raises awareness to how homophobia, biphobia and transphobia is still a very real thing in the 21st century. And it may have, we're not still living in Stonewall times, but in some countries we are. Just because it's not very, very violent like it was then in this country now, doesn't mean it's not in other places in the world and doesn't mean that it's not still a problem here. But yeah.
Why is it important to have a day like Idahot, a day that talks about homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia?
Well, as I was saying, it's just super important to raise awareness that this is still a very real, very present thing in our society all around the world.
Yeah, I love your little thumbs up.
It's important to raise awareness and to educate people and just to let people know how words can actually hurt and words can affect people and stuff like that happens shouldn't happen against people. I've experienced people call me freak or tranny or stuff like that, but at first it made me feel like I wish I weren't
It's
trans
7 o'clock
or something like that. But now, if someone just says that, I just say stuff about myself, so it doesn't affect me anymore. Or I just laugh it off.
You've talked about how there's really, really violent forms of homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia, but there's still issues here. If you're comfortable, and only if you're comfortable, are there any forms of queerphobia in general that you might have experienced in the UK that people might not be aware of or should be made aware of?
Yeah, it's what a lot of people would just count as little things, but when a lot of people are doing these little things, they build up. People don't really realise the effect that these things have. So things like people using slurs just in common conversation, or even to be offensive, people don't see what's going on inside someone's head and how these slurs and how their offence actually affects these people. Yeah.
Any examples of when that's happened to you or how that's made you feel?
It happens sometimes in school. It's not a fun experience. It makes you quite self-conscious. You begin to question everything about yourself and whether what you're doing is right. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just what you're doing, but who you are.
Yeah.
It's deeper than that.
Mm.
Right? And I think that's a big issue with homophobia, transphobia, biphobia, and just systems of heteronormativity and cisnormativity, right? They make us second guess not what we're doing, but what we are and who we are and whether or not we even have a place in the world. Yeah, I think you really, you really nailed the issue down. It's really important. And that has long-term consequences, right? I think that affects our mental health and how we're doing. Really key. Yeah. Thanks, Matthew. And what can we do about it? What can we do to fight or end or challenge homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia?
Well, the best way to combat it really is to kind of make it mainstream, to educate people, not to shove it in people's faces, as people would call it, but to make sure it's there in the media for people to see, because the more they see it, the more normalised they become to it. it's all just about the exposure, really. Like, people find that they'll be so much more accepting of something, so much more aware than when they actually understand a lot more how it works. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. There's a term called non-normative or normativity, right? So I talked earlier about heteronormativity, and that is a system in place that makes being straight and cisgender the only thing that's acceptable. Not more normal than gay and trans people, but like the only normal. And so making gay people, bi people, trans people, anyone who's LGBTQ plus normal is a way of pushing back against those ideas and that system, and really, really important.
I think you should educate people more or just normalise it in society. So say people have to come out, they shouldn't have to come out. Like if someone's straight, they don't have to come out and say, oh, I'm straight. Same with if someone's LGBT, they shouldn't have to come out and be like, oh, I'm gay, oh, I'm trans, oh, I'm bi, stuff like that. They should just be able to be themselves without having to make a big deal about it. And people should just accept that and think it's just, oh yeah, that person's trans or that person's gay. It's just normal. And then maybe more people will be more accepting of it, and maybe not as like they might just accept it more and not say anything bad about it or negative. And there might always be the people who are like who just say mean things or just try and upset people, but they should learn that words do actually hurt people, and they should get taught the statistics so they know, oh, what they're doing is wrong. Education is important because if people are educated, they might not know or see what they're doing is wrong. Like, say someone said something, or like a derogatory term, they might think that's just a laugh with their mates, but they might not actually realise, oh, you shouldn't actually say that. But if they're educated about it, they'll learn more, and if they meet people like in real life or whatever, or just like know people who are LGBT, maybe then they'll be more fine with it and more chilled with it, and stop saying like the mean stuff, or stop bullying people or being transphobic, homophobic or biphobic towards others.
I know that schools are going to be adding LGBT issues onto PSHE. Do you think that come September, do you think that'll be helpful at all?
It might be a bit, but a lot of times I know that schools, especially like in high years, who are like doing like GCSEs and stuff like that, they just miss out PSHE altogether and just do other work instead. So if it's just during PHSE, then maybe it might not get taught. So maybe you should do like a different like a bit in like a bit in like a time in like English, or a bit in like a different class where you get taught about it. Or even like just like be more open about it, like around school, have like maybe like a LGBT group or something in schools, or just have posters that say different terms and stuff, so you're not like or even like on social media, everyone goes on social media, that might help people understand more.
Excellent.
Really, really important. You talked about education, which I think is really key. In activist spaces, we would call this creating new knowledge. That within society we have a way of thinking, a very hetero way of thinking, and education pushes back against that and creates new forms of thinking, new knowledge. And we've got, as one way of doing that, we've got these incredible images that the group have made with the different LGBT terms. Why do you think these posters are really important? And just education in general is really important for challenging homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia.
I mean, it's important that people understand what's actually going on, and they can do that better when they actually know what to think, when they actually can develop an understanding of how people feel. Like, that's why it's good to educate people. The posters that have been made are particularly good because they're really eye-grabbing. The designs are great as well. So it's not something that someone's going to look at and go, oh, that looks boring, I'm not going to read that. So people will find themselves reading it without even really realizing that they have, which is good, because it's once again, it's kind of putting it in the media and just making it more mainstream and normalizing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right, Matthew. Yeah, 100%. Before we finish recording, is there anything else you'd like to share for Idahot, or anything you'd really like people to hear or know moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's important that people know that people who have issues with LGBTQ plus people need to get their head around it, because frankly, we're not going anywhere. We are who we are. That's not going to change. So we don't need to sort ourselves out. You do. But yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. I think that's really great. I think something that I really hold on to is everyone says that they're entitled to their own opinion. And my response is, you're not entitled. Think about entitlement. You're not entitled to have an uninformed opinion.
Yeah.
You don't get to be ignorant and spout that as fact. And you're right. The fact is, LGBTQ plus people are not going anywhere. We're fine as we are. And ignorant people need to do their homework and catch up.